Mr. Speaker, the independent bipartisan commission on the BP oil spill issued its final report last month. And what did it conclude? Well, that the Deepwater Horizon went to the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, creating the worst environmental disaster in our country's history, was not an isolated incident, that the problems were systemic across the entire oil and gas industry. That report was a blistering, scalding indictment of the deregulatory environment which was created at the Department of Interior that led inexorably, inevitably to this catastrophe, this environmental catastrophe. But are we here tonight debating legislation to implement the reforms that the Commission presented to the Congress in order to prevent another catastrophe like this? No, we are not. We are instead debating whether or not we should have fewer regulations, whether or not regulations that actually protect against incidents like this hurt job creation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we learned from the Deepwater Horizon catastrophe was that lax regulation doesn't save money, lax regulation costs money. Lax regulation does not create jobs, lax regulation destroys jobs. And in this case, lax regulation led to the loss of 11 lives, 155 other individuals who were seriously injured. Lax regulation, ladies and gentlemen, leads to catastrophe. Boosterism breeds overconfidence, and overconfidence breeds disaster. That's what happens in our financial markets. That's what happens in environmental and health regulation when you just trust the private sector to always do the right thing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when the government doesn't move in to protect the little guy, to protect ordinary citizens. The reason that we were able to move from the average age of death at 48 years of age in the year 1900, after 5,000 years from the Garden of Eden until 1900, to 79 years of age, just 100 years later, is we started to regulate for public health and safety for ordinary people. Methuselah always lived until 900 years. The wealthy always did well. But only when regulations started to be put on the books to protect the meat, the water, the air, and the environment in which people live did ordinary families start to benefit as well. That's what they want to take off the books. That's the agenda of the large companies across our country. I yield myself one additional minute.
Gentleman is recognized.
I thank you. How do you create jobs? We haven't heard that yet. We haven't heard that yet. Well, they say drilling. Well, last year there were 4,700 new leases that were granted by the Bureau of Land Management. But the oil industry only began drilling on 1,400 of them, only one-third. Now, we don't really have to worry going forward in the future because at $100 a barrel, plus, ladies and gentlemen, the $40 billion in tax breaks that the Republicans want to give to the oil industry over the next 5 years, we don't have to worry that they're going to go drill because they're going and drilling. But why are we giving them $40 billion? And why aren't the Republicans out here as free market devotees and saying, let's take that $40 billion of taxpayers' money away from the oil industry? Why aren't they doing that? Why are they going to allow the taxpayers to be shaken upside down at the gas pump and have money come out of their pockets for the rest of this year as the price of a gallon of gasoline goes to $3.30, $3.40, all the way back up to $4 a gallon again? Why? I yield myself one additional minute.
Gentleman is recognized.
Because the real agenda here is to create as many red herrings as they can about the real agenda. As a matter of fact, we can put an aquarium out here. There are so many red herrings. As a matter of fact, so many red herrings are being created by the Republicans in this debate that they wouldn't even be an endangered species. There are so many things that they are saying that are taking us off the real agenda that they are talking about. And the real agenda is to make sure that we do not invest in wind, that we do not invest in solar. And by the way, in the Waxman-Markey bill that passed last year, $60 billion was put in to the Waxman-Markey bill for clean coal technology. $75 billion was put into that bill for nuclear technology that they could apply for low-interest loans to build new nuclear power plants in our country, plus wind, plus solar, plus geothermal, plus all the other things that we could do domestically in our country. What we're talking about here, though, is a different agenda altogether. It's an agenda that will just allow the oil industry to go back to business as usual without the regulations to protect the public health and safety. I reserve the balance of my time.